justice. Show me how to punish Perseus for this blasphemy. Look on this. In wounding me, he has insulted you. Then surely he must be punished. Show me. Help me.
Perseus is protected by Zeus himself. There is nothing I can do.
Then punish those that Perseus loves! The Queen, Andromeda, the people of Joppa! Persuade your devoted Lord Poseidon to let loose the Kraken on the city. Let the Kraken destroy Joppa as it destroyed Argus. I demand justice!
Justice or revenge?
Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. Or right.
Can you do that again, but like at a 10 instead of that 3 you just gave us?
Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. Or right.
I kind of like that better. I like that.
But it's like animated. I can't do that every time. It's going to get stale.
Well,
you don't
keep
have
it-
to. I'm Reese. Across from me, we have...
David.
And to his left, we have...
Irina.
And further off to his left, we have...
Calabos. I haven't felt a woman's touch in many moons.
Also known as Noah.
You're an ugly bastard.
A little furry, too.
And failing to create the illusion of riding Pegasus with his poor green screen setup, we have...
AJ.
You need to update that green screen, buddy.
And we are, of course, talking about Clash of the Titans tonight, a movie that came out in 1981, directed by Desmond Davis, who also directed a lot of films that you probably have not heard of, unless you're a serious film buff. That is Girl with the Green Eyes, I Was Happy Here, Smashing Time, and Ordeal by Innocence.
I was happy here too until I watched this.
Yeah, but since this is more dominantly known as a Ray Harryhausen film, I think it more adequate to list off his films because he often has a big hand in the direction of these movies. Ray Harryhausen is responsible for films like, or not responsible, but it has made huge contributions to films like Mighty Joe Young, The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, and the film we covered last week, Jason and the Argonauts. The movie stars Harry Hamlin, Laurence Olivier, Judy Bowker, Maggie Smith, who's now known as Dame Maggie Smith, Burgess Meredith, and Ursula Andress. And it's written by Beverly Cross, who also wrote Jason and the Argonauts.
Wait, so question on that. We had, what was it, Mighty Joe Young in there for Ray Harryhausen?
Yeah, the 1949 version, not the one you're
I
thinking
was
of.
so
Yeah,
confused.
no.
I was like, when was he in that movie?
Yeah, so apparently Mighty Joe Young is actually a remake, which I did not know.
Didn't know that either.
Yeah. And if you're new to this podcast, on this show, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So guys, had y'all seen Clash of the Titans, 1981, the original, before this episode? I'm going to go to you, David.
You almost never start with me. I'm just going to say,
Well, I'm
every
going
single
to
time.
you. I'm going to you.
I think because I used to sit right next to you before, you never called on me.
Probably.
It's kind of nice. I kind of like being called first. No, I have never seen this movie. You made me watch the newer one, but we'll talk about that.
Did I make you
next.
watch that one?
You did.
I don't remember making you watch that movie, but I make a lot of people watch a lot
You
of
do.
movies.
You know how many times we brought that up in episodes where like you made us watch this and like I don't remember that. You must just like
It's
put
just-
movies on and then leave the room.
I don't.
He does.
Okay, I will admit to the making y'all watch movies part, I don't think I always leave the room.
You
though.
do.
I don't always leave the room. No, I
You-
like
No. He
always.
doesn't always leave the room.
It's very frequent, though.
Actually, especially if it's a scary movie, you can almost guarantee he will stay there to make sure
Yeah.
that I'm there.
Yeah, because I like to
crying in
see
the
you.
corner.
Yeah, exactly.
If you really like this movie, or if you're seeking a reaction, you'll stay. But oftentimes you'll be, hey, you need to watch this movie, and then you put it on.
but I come in for the
And then
epic, cool moments to see
you,
y'all's reactions. That's
leave.
the reason I put the movie on
but,
for you.
But you leave. It's irresponsible.
it's irresponsible.
It's irresponsible.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to educate you. I can't, take care of you the whole
It's
journey.
like, I've seen this 3 times. I'm the
but you
professor.
can't.
You need to watch this as the pupil.
Which, weird. Here, I'm going to put on the remake of Clash of the Titans to educate you.
No,
on what? I don't know.
I don't know. You have something with those remakes.
Anyway, how about you, Irina?
The thing is, I didn't think I had seen this before, but every now and then there would be a scene or a creature that was very familiar. And maybe it's just because I've seen videos where they're constantly throwing Ray Harryhausen creatures at your face in special effects videos or something. So maybe that was it. But then another weird thing happened where when the initial music came in for the film, I immediately recognized it and was able to hum along. And I don't know
confirm.
how I know it. I don't know where, and it's frustrating because I can't
Look,
nail it down.
I'm just going to say, Irina has this weird thing with music where she will hum along to a lot of things that she may or may not remember.
Yeah.
She has like an archive in the back of her head for music, and it's weird.
But and maybe that's just because I was listening to a film score playlist or something.
Look,
but
or your mom put it on in the background when you
maybe.
were 5, and your brain for some reason remembered it.
Not to mention, David and Calabos have a striking similarity.
yeah,
They
that's
do.
true.
In what way?
That's true.
The tail.
It is true. When I saw him, I was like, I feel like I've seen this before.
I need an earring. That's what I need.
But bottom line is, it's as if I've never seen this. If I did, I don't remember.
It's only
any
in
of it.
little bits and pieces that
Only
you're like-
weird fragments.
Yeah. How about you, Noah?
I remember certain scenes, but I hadn't watched it fully.
Okay. So pretty much the same as Irina.
Yeah, dog.
And not so many words.
And you, AJ?
Yeah, so I hadn't seen it for a while. I mean, I definitely remember when it came out, it was pretty popular, and I was kind of surprised. I mean, Leo never
Wait,
got a nomination
out?
for this.
When it
Yeah,
came
you
out,
didn't
you were
play,
around
like,
in
the themes-
1981?
Yeah, the theme song for, you never played that on recorder as a kid in school?
Hot Cross Buns?
No, the Titanic theme song. Whatever go on, whatever it is.
What, they taught you that?
You're talking about
in
the
grade
crash of the
school?
Titanic, right?
That's a movie?
Well, it's the subject of the movie, Titanic. Although I guess I don't
Now you're
remember
going by
being remade.
subject.
There was water involved.
Big disaster.
There was a clash of iceberg and ship.
So had you seen Clash of the Titans then? Not Crash of the Titanic?
Yeah, I think I had. It didn't really stick out in my mind, but pretty sure I had seen bits and pieces of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
For the record, I had not seen this film. There's like 2 or 3 of these old Greek movies that I have seen, and this is the one where I did not recognize a single thing about it. Like, I knew the movie poster, and I knew Harry Hamlin was in it. That's it. That's all. Had not seen any of this. Nothing about this movie was like, oh, what do I know that from? And
Yeah.
This was like a completely new experience. Okay, well, let's move along. David, before we get to that story, do you want to give us a quick call to action? I kind of am looking forward to this.
I don't have a plan this time.
No, I think you're best, though, when you don't have a plan. I kind of like it.
Let's see. Hold on. Let's see if we can make it related to the movie somehow. I got nothing. All right.
Hey, no, here's what I want you to do.
Okay.
This movie it mostly implements Shakespearean actors, people who acted on stage plays. You yourself were in theater, so I want you to put on your best, British accent and really sell us on why we should listen to, why our listeners should maybe reach out to more people and support us.
Yeah, put on your best British accent and pretend to be Greek.
Red leather, yellow leather. Red leather, yellow leather. Ha, ha. They're coming in the back door. All right. We're good. All right. I'm ready.
That was Ron Burgundy, but okay.
Franchise killer.
No.
You
Back out. We're all
No. You asked for it.
That's the wrong kind of British.
Hold on. I
let's
have
hear 'em
a
out.
skit.
Wait, I'll let him do that.
Let me
Guys,
do it.
guys, put your earplugs in. Go ahead, David.
Edit it later if you want. Don't stop me. The juices are flowing.
Ew.
In the wrong direction.
Things I can't say. All right.
Hey, can you do Michael Caine?
Welcome to Franchise Killer. This is the podcast where you need to go on and give 5 stars.
I can't tell if that's British or Australian, but I like it. Keep
My
going.
name is Michael Caine. That's Australian. You're right.
Go for it. Just go full speed ahead. Just do it.
All right. Franchise Killer, a podcast where you should go and give us a 5-star on Apple. Hey, maybe you should follow us on Instagram or Twitter. We do lots of things for you guys, and you guys should do something back in return for us.
Give it to us as hard as we give it to you.
We do this for you guys. It's not easy. We do it at a detriment to ourselves. I don't know.
Actually,
I think you covered all of it.
I think this is a good opportunity to pass the ball over to Noah to see what he can conjure up. I think Noah has the juices flowing in the right direction tonight.
And to my left, we have the next person giving us a Franchise Killer shout out.
Hi, guys. This is Noah here to give a call to action. You know, every now and again, usually on a Thursday, you get this feeling, this urge to give Franchise Killer a like on Apple Podcasts. We do this weekly at a deficit. It's kind of fun, but, you know, ultimately we make no money, so please give us money.
Give us money.
Money?
Or
We're
just
not
5
asking
views.
for money.
Or just 5 just 5 stars on Apple will help us.
Are you regretting passing this baton?
No, y'all have both set the baton on fire and thrown it into the woods and caused a massive forest fire. That
Build
we were
a
all-
wall.
It's really hard.
Build a
actually.
wall around our
Okay.
podcast.
Anyway, with that said, let's get into that story.
Provide him with suitable weapons. Weapons of divine temper. A helmet, a shield, a sword.
Find and fulfill your destiny.
The myth, the magic, the mystery, the majesty.
Destroy Argos. Let loose the last of the Titans.
Metro Goldwyn Mayer presents Clash of the Titans. The good, the evil, the danger, the daring.
How may a mortal man face and defeat the Kraken?
Clash of the Titans. The combat, the courage, the splendor, the spectacle.
King Acrisius of Argos imprisons his daughter, Danae, jealous of her beauty. When the god Zeus impregnates her, Acrisius banishes his daughter and his newborn grandson Perseus to sea in a wooden chest. In retribution, Zeus kills Acrisius and orders Poseidon to release the last of the Titans, a gigantic sea monster called the Kraken, to destroy Argos. Danae and Perseus safely float to the island of Seriphos, where Perseus grows to adulthood.
As far as this goes, Clash of the Titans is the name. Which Titans clash in this movie? I ask you.
I mean, the head of Medusa and the Kraken.
Yeah, fun fact, neither are Titans.
I think they claim in this, though, that Medusa is like a Titan.
They claim that. but
I
they're not.
actually imagine what they're thinking the Clash of the Titans is actually the gods because they're having a disagreement and
I'm just going to interject and say I looked this up. It's on the Clash of the Titans 1981 Wikipedia. They're talking about
very credible.
Medusa
Yep.
and the Kraken and that they are incorrect and there are no Titans in this movie.
But I do think you're right, Noah. I think that's what is intended by the title. Even though, and I guess they're expecting that the audience doesn't really care or know what Titans are.
I think, I believe that they're not using Titans in the sense that they're thinking Kronos, Gaia, and all that. They're thinking, okay, these are, Titans of like godly formed
They're
things.
bigger than human beings.
Bigger, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this should have been like Clash of the Demigods, because you got Perseus and Calabos or whatever.
Calabos.
Calabos.
Yeah.
Calabos.
So what do we think of this opening setup? We won't linger here too long because we're not even at like the main story yet. But we have like the gathering of the gods. Calabos and Perseus are the kind of demigods that are introduced here. Calabos kind of got the short end of the stick.
Kind of metal.
Because he was evil. He was constantly committing crimes, apparently. He's not a good dude.
I will say, coming off of Jason and the Argonauts, I like more how they, brought to life Olympus. I think Zeus on the throne with this like background of this starlight or whatever it is, sunlight behind him looks
Lasers.
really cool.
Honestly, it was just dots with lasers behind him. That's all it was.
Which was fine.
I think
Better than the golden shower scene.
Oh no.
When they said that.
But I think that in this, they depicted the gods a little bit better. I mean, they're still all a bunch of old white people.
Yeah.
But they're actually not completely really benefactors. They're not these innocent, we want the betterment of mankind.
Yeah, they're very petty.
Yeah, they're more petty, which is, I mean, maybe still not as bad as they're supposed to be depicted, but more
than
bad
Jason and the
than they
Argonauts.
were in Jason and the Argonauts.
I was surprised, and Zeus is still a D-bag, but he's like not nearly as much of a D-bag as I'm used to seeing him in the movies. Like, he's kind of slightly more benevolent, even though he's still
Towards his
not
own
great.
kid.
Yeah, true.
That sounds like Zeus. Like, I'm going to protect my own.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly Zeus. He's he only cares about where his penis lands and
Honestly,
what comes from it.
Look, Noah is 100% correct on this. Irene and I watched 2 hours worth of History
Golden
Channel
showers.
Greek documentaries. No. And basically, Zeus, that's all he did was go around sleeping with people, and then he's like, well, that's mine, so I guess I'll throw some
Against
stuff
their
at
will.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, man, sometimes geese.
No, a
goosen.
swan.
In this one in particular, he I think the mythology is that he actually disguises himself as
Golden shower.
If you say that one more time, AJ, I will come over there and disguise
fixated.
myself as a golden shower.
So
Can you just
essentially,
imagine
if I
conception
recall,
is mythologized about your mother getting a golden shower for all of eternity?
yeah, David.
I don't what after Mother's Day, guys.
But yeah, literally, what happens is that Zeus is like, "Hey, that girl's pretty. I'm gonna pretend to be her husband and seduce her," and then he has the baby with her, and the guy is mad and he banishes her. And
Classic Zeus.
and so Zeus is like, "Hey, I don't like that you did that, so I'm gonna have my son kill you."
like that.
And that's
make me
how
mad.
it goes.
So another thing I noticed, this movie, the effects, for me at least, somehow look worse than Jason and the Argonauts, the last movie that we talked about.
Yep.
And I don't know what that is. Is it that, like, did y'all get that same sense?
I feel like it's
Yes.
almost the advancement of cameras and the camera work.
like it exposes the
and it doesn't match up anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say that same thing. I think it's just everything else is starting to look better, and every other
because
aspect is better. So your standard has risen with the movie.
Yeah.
For context, for our listeners, this is a little around 20 years after.
Yeah.
So Jason and the Argonauts, which there's a lot that happens in 20 years.
And this is if not the last movie of Ray Harryhausen, at least like close to the end of his career before he retired.
The biggest budget movie he did.
So maybe it was an intentional choice to kind of harken back to an older time, because I certainly don't think 1980s when I think of this movie. It does look more like 70s, 60s.
Yeah.
Felt like I was watching a Rankin Bass Rudolph special or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The stop motion.
So it's kind of charming in a way, but it's also like you could have at least David made a good point though before this episode, and it was like this movie would look better with in the context of the time that you watched it,
The original treatment.
Yeah, where you're seeing like all the film grain, and it's just like kind of
Right.
the transfer is rough, and it just looks like. But this one, watching it in an HD setting is just you see all of those flaws.
The
more.
flaws will be hidden in the original context.
In that case, I guess I had the benefit of watching it in that film grain.
Yeah.
Closer,
I
anyway.
I had a kind of low quality viewing experience, but I think it did benefit the movie based on how y'all's opinions are.
Yeah, I don't think it was bad. I
No,
think it's got a charm to it, as I've said. I love seeing Harryhausen's work on screen.
Yeah.
I just think with the more modernized technology this movie was made with, it kind of exposes a lot of those faults more.
Indeed.
Any further comments on this kind of prologue, I guess, to the main story before we get to them caught up as in the older Perseus, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's I guess it's sort of explained later what is happening, but I was a little confused about the relationship or why this lady was being sent into the water to begin with. But I think that was it. It was answered a little later, so that was my only.
Yeah, you're right. They just kind of toss her and her baby
into the water.
Yeah.
And like, I will not be to blame for this. And then
I
Zeus
wash
is
my
immediately
hands.
No.
saying, "It's your fault."
You are to blame. You cannot claim you're not to blame.
What do you think of the Kraken, the first creature we see technically?
Hey, that's Harryhausen.
I thought that's not what I think of when I think of Kraken.
Yeah.
It's
Not
like
even
a
close.
it's like a
Creature
mesh
from the
between
Black Lagoon
yes,
or something.
It's like a mesh between the creature from the Black Lagoon and Godzilla.
Yes, that's a perfect description.
And we will get to that more later on. But yeah, usually I think of squid when I think of Kraken, but
I think as far as filming this kind of movie and in the era that it was filmed, I thought it was clever to have only little corners of it in the screen. It kind of does give you the idea that it might be larger than what you're seeing. I think it would have been a bad move to show it full on, like everything in the beginning.
Yeah. That's smart. Just give a little tease.
Yeah.
This thing's big. Also, this is one of the few PG rated movies that you will see multiple instances of boob flashes full on.
and butt.
Apparently in Greece, the mother walks naked with her son hand in hand on the beach
For 40 days.
and that's cool.
And
And
everything's
nights.
cool.
Golden
All right.
showers.
AJ, is this your contribution to this episode?
It is.
All right, let's move on. Calabos, the spoiled and rebellious son of the sea goddess Thetis, is betrothed to Princess Andromeda, daughter of Queen Cassiopeia of Joppa. But for committing several atrocities against Zeus, including destroying Zeus's sacred flying horses, except for Pegasus, Zeus transforms Calabos into a deformed, monstrous, satyr-like creature. In revenge, Thetis transports an adult Perseus from Seriphos to an abandoned amphitheater in Joppa, where he befriends a soldier, Thalo, and an elderly poet named Ammon, and learns that Andromeda is under a curse and cannot marry unless her suitor, upon the threat of execution if he fails, successfully answers a riddle concocted by Calabos. Zeus sends Perseus a god-crafted helmet from Athena, which makes its wearer invisible, a magical sword from Aphrodite, and a shield from Hera. Perseus, wearing the helmet, captures Pegasus and follows Calabos' giant vulture carrying off Andromeda's spirit during her sleep to learn the next riddle. Perseus is discovered and nearly killed by Calabos, but manages to sever one of Calabos' hands, losing his helmet in the process.
What
All right.
an idiot.
So Harry Hamlin as Perseus. I think a lot of us were directly comparing him to Jason from Jason and the Argonauts.
Yep.
Yeah.
How do you think Harry Hamlin compares? I think they're definitely these are two different approaches to this type of performance. What do y'all think? Does he pull this character of Perseus off or not?
Depends on which section of the movie you were in.
Okay, well, we'll elaborate on that a little bit, David.
The first part, it was very poor in my opinion. I thought that it was subpar to even Jason and the Argonauts. I think that he was a kind of a ditzy, I don't know what's going on kind of guy. And maybe it was because of everything else around him not suiting him. But once they start picking up the plot, he started gaining more intelligence. Yeah. And you could see that the cogs were turning the more it happened. So it got better as it went.
Yeah. Any other opinions? I have my own, but
I'm gonna 100% disagree.
Please tell me how in the beginning he was an intelligent person. Please.
No, intelligence doesn't matter. It's performance.
Yeah, I think
the performance was the same.
No, I think his performance is actually a lot better than Jason.
That would be Todd Armstrong, by the way.
Todd Armstrong.
But I do want to say that Todd Armstrong that his performance was highly dubbed by a different actor, so a lot of his actual performance didn't come through.
Right.
Well, I think my main issue with Jason and the Argonauts was with how just stupid Jason was, and how I don't know, he did not look like he could ever command a troop, and everything just happened to kind of work for him. And I do love Jason and the Argonauts, but
yeah.
It's just he did not look.
Are we talking about looks? Or are we talking about acting?
No. It's looks and acting. Like whenever I say look, I didn't mean literally look like how he looks. I meant the way that he acts and commands a scene.
Like he doesn't strike a hero pose.
Was not exactly. He was not. He just did not seem like a hero. He seemed like he was supposed to be a henchman.
I'm gonna say they're very, very similar. To me, the way they come across is the first thing they both say in some of their opening scenes are, "Hi, I am this guy, and I am the heir to the throne.
Dude, okay,
I'm going to do this."
But in one situation, he's like, "Oh, he's the returned prince. Oh, good." And in Jason and the Argonauts, he literally tells his arch nemesis, "Hey, I'm the guy that you want to kill."
He doesn't know that,
Yeah, but
though.
you don't just you don't stupidly go into an enemy camp where you know.
All right, hold on. I'm just going to say this. He says in this movie, in Clash of the Titans, our main character says that to some random guy as well, and it just happens to not be the king. If it was the king, it could be the exact same story.
No. Right. The point being
let's hear
the command. Hold on. The command was under the enemy's control, and everyone knew that in Jason and the Argonauts. Everyone knew that city was sacked. That city was sacked and taken over by someone who literally had a prophecy saying, "Hey, this guy's gonna kill you later." And then
he had a prophecy, so therefore it doesn't matter.
AJ, what you seem like you were trying to interject there. What do you got?
So, I guess I'm in the middle here. I kind of would have liked to see a blend. I thought that from a heroic bearing or demeanor, which I think is what Noah's trying to describe, Jason actually had a bit more of that, but I'm realizing that it's how he bounces off his compatriots and his on-screen co-actors and characters. So when we have Perseus and Andromeda in a, two-shot or something like that, their interaction, his kind of presence on screen is elevated by whoever he's with. I felt like Jason and the Argonauts kind of was more of a dominant force in, interacting with his and kind of portraying that charisma and driving that character feel.
Yeah.
So that, in my opinion, when Perseus here was in the middle of a group, he didn't feel like he stood out as much. Right. But when he's in the intimate scenes, he does. So
I could definitely see that. For me, Jason was a very direct, type of protagonist where he would spell out everything that he's going to do. We're going over here. We're going over there. Perseus he's less of a dominant force than Jason was, but he has more going on behind the eyes where it's there's thought behind it. It's there's more subtlety and nuance to the performance, and there is that more kind of theatrically trained kind of, I don't know. I thought it was much more successful than Jason, but I see Jason as more of a striking hero figure than Perseus. characters.
I would say it, like you're saying, it did seem like this film was trying to focus more on the characters and the progression of story than Jason and the Argonauts was. I think in Jason and the Argonauts, it's pretty obvious that it was more like trying to carry over to the next monster or the next big graphic. This one, you actually don't see all that much close together. It's mostly exposition and trying to show you who Perseus is and who Andromeda is, and this kind of bickering between the gods and goddesses, and basically laying down the work so that you can follow along with the story more easily. And I appreciate that. I think that was something that was missing definitely from the first. And it's pretty obvious they were trying to pull in more big names to try and make up that difference. I think they were aware of that and that they needed some talent on screen. That being said, I don't think it helped the writing that much. I think the writing is really to blame here because there's a lot of kind of empty words almost, because they are acting well within their boundaries. And
it was the same writer in Jason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think there's something lacking there. And I don't know how much this had to interfere with the movie, but I was watching a documentary about the making of Clash of the Titans and Jason and the Argonauts, and it seemed like, especially when the creatures are on screen, Ray Harryhausen had a lot more influence on the way scenes were played out, whereas the director was almost kind of superfluous.
Like they were just hired to do the
they were
job.
just hired.
In which one?
In both. Both.
Okay,
like anytime there's a Ray Harryhausen film, he kind of takes the reins.
The uncredited director.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much he had to do with other scenes, but that might be a factor as to why some is awkward. Some of it is awkward because that's not necessarily his field, and his focus is his creatures, really.
Yeah.
I
like
feel
Pegasus. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to go into the Pegasus and how there's two scenes. You either see a really close up of a horse's face or a really wide angle shot of clay, and there's not an in between. It's one or the other, and it's kind of jarring for me. So that's just how I feel about it.
So what you said about the Shakespearean kind of perspective of these actors here kind of clarified what I was trying to pinpoint. A lot of these scenes in this particular movie, it seems like each character is trying to do an individual, almost like an aside or soliloquy, like with an independent strong point, with the exception of Andromeda and Perseus. Right. Those scenes seem to mesh. But the interweaving of the character relations were just like kind of stark points instead of being smoothed over between each character. And I feel like in Jason, that was done better. And what Reese said, each character did well, in my mind, is from the mythology, from what I remember, is actually the inverse, where Perseus was more of the soldier. I mean, I think that's what his name kind of breaks down to. And Jason is a little bit more of the leader, thinker kind of thing.
Right,
but I think it was just the stylistic approach of where these actors' talents were, and they, if there's just not a strong director to push them and say, hey, don't try to steal the spotlight and just say this one thing and be dominant about it. It might be something insignificant, but it seems like it's supposed to be more significant just because of their delivery of it, instead of supporting, the other character or the other, plot point at that time. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point to make.
So let's quickly touch on Calabos here, played by Neil McCarthy. Opinions on this? This is a character that was, if it was ever a close-up, you would actually see the actor with the makeup on.
Right.
But any, more pulled-out shot of that, you would see the Ray Harryhausen design. Yeah. One of the few instances where I was like, okay, this might not have actually needed a stop-motion treatment. You could have just had a guy in a suit.
So,
but go
crazy
ahead.
perm.
For me, it was like, you have to do one or the other. And I think maybe they were trying to steer clear of creatures that spoke because they don't quite have that down. And I think that's why they would have the close-ups. Otherwise, I'm sure they would just go full-on stop motion. but it really does feel like a completely different creature, you know? And the only reason I think that was why was because later you have Medusa, which she doesn't speak at all, just kind of screams.
Well, I thought it was just because it has a tail, and they're like, oh, how do we do the tail? Well, just let Harryhausen take care of it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Well,
I guess one of
go
it was a little weird whenever like had him stop motion, because every time he was having a fight with Perseus, I wasn't quite sure that was him. I thought, oh, that's just one of those creatures or one of his lackeys maybe. They didn't really have I am Calabos, the enemy of the story. It just seemed like, oh, he's having a fight with someone. That guy just appeared.
I will say, having seen the remake already, and not to tease like the next episode, because I have not actually rewatched the remake for when this will happen next episode. I do think they established the rivalry between Perseus and Calabos better in this film, where it's like it is a more prominent, yes, these two are kind of at odds throughout this whole movie, and you're waiting to see how the chips fall in the end.
Well, there's a more interesting relationship as far as Calabos and his mother, Thetis, and then Zeus and his son Perseus. And Perseus is essentially just... No, I just came here, I fell in love with Andromeda, and I want to lift this curse because that's unfair.
Kind of a Sleeping Beauty thing. He is like, watched her
I
sleep.
love the incorporation of... There's more clashing of...
The Titans.
The gods in this one than there was in the first, where it's just kind of like, they're just sort of playing a game, I guess.
By the first, do you mean Jason?
A game of wits, yeah.
All right, so I want to tag along there and say there is a lot of things I have an issue with in this movie, but the story is not one of them.
I like the story,
I think the story is great.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was completely invested whenever Zeus is like, give him the shield, the whatever, give him the helmet, the artifacts, and he finds all of them. I'm going to go on an adventure now.
Yeah, it's like your Zelda story almost.
This whole thing I like the setup for. But even in those scenes, the setup when they portray them, they're like, "Oh, look, there's a plastic helmet thing over there."
Hang on. So David and I laughed when he puts the helmet on. He's like, "I'm going to Joppa," and then he leaves the sword and shield behind, and the guy's like, "Oh, wait, the young."
The youth of this time. We're like, really? I think he's just an idiot.
I just
think
love
that's
that
what it is.
the youth. They put the helmets on, but they forget the sword. Like, I would have thought the sword would be the fancy object they want to take.
See, here's the thing. I agree, and I don't think he's the smartest tool in the shed, but I still think that Jason was more dumb.
No, okay. So the thing about Jason is that he's just kind of empty. This guy, at least, there's something.
He has some intelligence.
But I think what would have worked better for his character is you do see a huge difference between the first half and the second half, and we'll get to the second half. And I'm assuming it's because he's been raised essentially on an island by his mom, kind of away from it all, so he's a little naive. So I get that. But if you saw a little more of that learning and understanding as he's kind of opened his eyes to the rest of the world, then there wouldn't be such a weird change there.
He's smarter than Percy Jackson, who literally goes to Hades just to tell him that he doesn't have the thing that Hades wants.
Oh, no.
Genius.
Doesn't notice a lightning bolt in the shield on his arm.
Whoops.
So let's talk about the Pegasus before we move on. The first kind of Pegasus flight.
Yeah.
I'll say it doesn't quite hold up to
the
today's
worst part of the
standards,
movie,
but-
yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Do you have a worst part?
I might agree with you, Noah.
I think that was perfectly well done for its time.
All right, I was just timing it. Can I say we were watching that scene in the background, and it's just 50-50. It's either wide angle Harryhausen or super zoomed in.
Compare this to Neverending Story.
It's the
about
same thing.
Coraline.
Okay,
Pegasus
so-
didn't wink at him every 5 seconds.
So
It's the same thing.
I think when they're trying to capture the Pegasus, that looks off to me. But actually, I didn't mind the zoomed out look of it flying through the air. That actually looked fine.
It's not bad.
I think that one looked okay.
I don't.
The rock with the cage was kind of weird.
It's anytime he's on the ground, I'm like, why not just use a practical horse with prosthetics? I don't understand. It would look better than this.
Wait, with prosthetics?
Well,
I do not think that would look better.
I think, okay, so this is something where I think it's a Ray Harryhausen thing, where it's more his desire to make these creatures.
Yeah.
I don't think he would be okay with just having a horse doing that.
Yeah, and this is kind of his swan song movie.
But
it's
also,
like,
how are you supposed to make in a prosthetic, unless you're using animatronics, how are you supposed to make those like wings move on
when he moves, if they're light enough, they will move on their own. And when he does,
no, but not naturally.
The Ray Harryhausen thing, when he moves, they're not.
Thing.
Did you see the owl?
Claymation? It's you can see it moving, like it just doesn't feel natural when you look at it.
Okay, but like
it just looks like a claymation moving.
Okay, well, it is what it is.
I think that's like one of the points you decided to criticize is not what needs most criticism.
I think it's very similar to the Calabos thing, where it's like that could have been better if you did it.
What's wrong with Calabos? Just the fact that
anything. The thing with Harryhausen is that you should use him for things that you cannot do practically.
I do agree that with Calabos they could have done a guy and just had him dressed up.
They did, and it would have been better.
What is weird about Harryhausen that I've noticed is the effects that are made to look like they are not like much bigger in scale compared to the humans are more effective than the ones that are actually like level to humans, which is weird. Like, I don't know. He's so good at doing that perspective.
I think it's the fact that you don't, in your mind, you don't necessarily know how a big thing will move, so that's believable to you.
That's exactly it.
But whenever it's something that's that size, that's the right size.
Well, it's kind of that
think differently.
Uncanny Valley sort of thing, where you are, because of what you've experienced, you're able to judge special effects in that way.
Exactly.
And you can't really explain why, but there's something off. If you ever see something that is beyond your comprehension, you're okay with accepting it.
Yes.
Yeah. Before we move on, there's important stuff that we got to get to with Calabos and Andromeda, and then there's a fight between Calabos and Perseus. What do y'all think of all this stuff with kind of Andromeda being imprisoned, Calabos, being a little rebellious, and then the Perseus trying to, or at least successfully actually rescuing Andromeda, and that the little tussle they have?
I was intrigued by the setup. I was disappointed by the execution.
Okay. Isn't that your review of the movie, basically?
Yeah, that's I captioned that much right there.
You can stop talking now for the rest of the podcast.
Was it rewatchable?
We did kind of get to that. We actually don't get to the ending result of all of that, but we do see the Rock carry off Andromeda in the little cage, and we see
Dwayne
Calabos
Johnson?
Amanda Seyfried?
I actually really like the scene between Calabos and Andromeda where he's talking to her about how now you don't like me because I'm this ugly thing now, pretty much.
Yeah.
Honestly, kind of felt bad for him.
Yeah, like it was a nice little insight into what's it actually taps into why Calabos is a bit of a tragic figure, whereas that's something the remake definitely does not do at all.
That goes back to the whole Shakespearean analogy that we've kind of thrown out there too. It is very Shakespearean almost.
It kind of shows that Andromeda's a little bit superficial.
A little bit, but he's also superficial.
He is also literally like an ogre with a tail.
But then again, okay, all of this,
I know.
Anything that came out within the past or 10 years prior to this and further, it's all superficial.
So, to put it in perspective, not that it really matters as far as the movie goes, but she was basically arranged to marry him. That doesn't mean that she changed her perspective on him because he's ugly.
Fair enough.
She's like,
But what I was getting at is that but this new guy, Perseus.
Well, like, when has mythology been any other way?
It's fair.
It's
That's
just
true.
like, oh yeah, I like this guy. Let's
But
get married.
I wasn't making a statement that
No, yeah,
it wasn't, how they depicted things. And those worked. It's just that poor fella here suddenly gets turned into a monster, and then nobody wants him.
I will say unfairly too.
He's a bit of a bad boy, apparently. Like, he's done something.
I think the big bad thing that he did is just that he's rebellious to the gods.
Yeah.
Which so is Perseus.
Yeah.
So are the other gods.
Jason.
I'm going to go ahead and continue with the story. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay. The next morning, Perseus presents himself as the next husband-to-be and correctly answers the riddle, winning Andromeda's hand in marriage. Finding that Thetis cannot act against Perseus, Calabos instead demands that she takes vengeance on Joppa. At the wedding in Thetis' temple, Queen Cassiopeia declares Andromeda's beauty greater to that of Thetis herself, whereupon an earthquake shakes the temple, causing the head of the statue of Thetis to break off and crash to the floor. Thetis, using the statue's head to speak through, demands Andromeda be sacrificed to the Kraken on pain of Joppa's destruction. Perseus seeks a way to defeat the Kraken, but Pegasus is captured by Calabos and his men. Zeus commands Athena to give Perseus her owl, Bubo. She orders Hephaestus to build a golden replica of Bubo instead, who leads Perseus, Andromeda, Ammon, Thallo, and some soldiers to the Stygian witches. By taking their magic eye, Perseus forces them to reveal that the only way to defeat the Kraken is by using the head of the Gorgon Medusa, whose gaze can turn any living thing into stone, who lives on an island in the river Styx at the edge of the underworld. The next day, the group continues on their journey without Andromeda and Ammon, who return to Joppa.
I have to say, I think this was one of my favorite scenes, is the falling off of the head of Thetis. I thought that was a cool effect, and also just visually kind of what I want to see as far as God's interference on Earth or on their land.
Yeah, I love the more simple tactile moments where it's just like the cracking of stone and stuff like that. Less of the weird like, oh, now it's Maggie Smith's face on the stone.
Yeah. So the only thing, I liked the concept of it, but the only thing was her face never quite lined up exactly.
Yeah, it wasn't quite
with
there.
The face.
It was not a bad effort, but it wasn't quite there.
I love the concept, but it just didn't quite. I would have preferred maybe if they just had the eyes open, you know, and then you hear the talking, you know. But otherwise, I love that concept.
Yeah,
I agree.
Too bad she wasn't Athena. Then she could have been Minerva, and then Minerva.
Yeah. Another thing that's interesting about this movie is like the real journey begins like an hour into the film. Like you look, the first part of this is almost a side quest, and then you have your final journey.
Yeah.
That was the thing that was one thing that kind of was off about this movie for me is I guess you sum it up to pacing maybe.
Yeah.
But I thought Perseus was introduced a little too late, and by Perseus being introduced too late, I mean his adult self.
Yeah.
They kind of skipped his whole childhood and just had him, handsome man, or what at the time
He's
they
suddenly
consider
adult.
handsome.
Yeah.
And then he kind of quickly is able to do all these things. The god, or his daddy loves him, gives him super stuff, and I pretty much pay to win. But yeah, that was the one thing that bothered me, is just the fact that he kind of appears a little late in the movie and is the main character.
The funny thing is, I think everyone here kind of understands, although I haven't heard your perspective, AJ, but most of us around this table have noticed that shift, that kind of dramatic shift here. And it's funny because in my notes, when I was watching this is where I wrote down in my journal, this is where the movie should start. Like that is my exact note there.
It's a
because
big shift.
This movie is pretty long, and I think you can sum up what happened before at this moment, but they kind of gave you this really long exposition where I was kind of zoning in and out of, sort of just watching it.
Right.
So I think this is where the action or the intrigue actually picks up, and would have been a great start to a story, because I think this is actually where the story starts.
Yeah. So, I agree in the aspect that the first half is a lot of exposition and
Slower pacing.
It's essential. Yeah. I don't even know if it's slower pacing so much as the fact that it's a lot of stuff that you kind of have to know everything that's going on before you're able to enjoy the second half of it, which is the better half. I will agree. I think if this were either a longer movie, maybe they'd be able to flesh it out that first half better.
Yeah.
And make it, fit with the second half in such a way that you are able to enjoy it as one whole piece. Or if they had maybe a mini series of it and decided to do each individual bit of it. Because there's a lot of important plot, I guess, going on throughout the first half. It's just kind of glossed over really quickly so that you can get to the meat of it, but that still happens halfway through the movie.
Well, contrast it with Jason and the Argonauts, where that story definitely has a lot going on as well, where they just hit
They just
the highlights.
through it.
Exactly. It's they're not masterpieces, I should say.
It was a Spark Notes version of Jason and the Argonauts.
Yeah. But yeah, I think both of the movies, for me at least, are really fun adventures. Even if it's not perfectly paced or there are issues along the way. I always love that ancient Greek adventure, and the hero slays this mythical beast, and goes on having glorious accomplishments.
I kind of want to give Harry Hamlin a little bit of credit. There's this scene where he answers the riddle, Andromeda's riddle, and he proclaims his love for her. This is a scene that would not have worked with the actor in Jason and the Argonauts. Sorry, what's his name? Todd something. Todd. I think he actually pulls this scene off where it would have been
really
this
cheesy,
cringe-worthy scene. Like he answers the riddle. He comes out in this like kind of grand, I don't know.
I've got my nice clothes. I've brought the hand of my foe.
Yeah, he throws the hand down. It's just I believed it. It was one of those moments where I was like, yeah, Perseus, you did your thing and it works.
Well,
I'll be
also
the dissenting opinion on that, but I kind of get where you're coming from, but I also felt like with the pacing things from the first part, it's like, I have the answer to your riddle. What riddle are you talking about? Maybe
they didn't really do a good job of setting up like why he has to do that.
And I think the whole confusion is with her soul being taken over to the marsh and to visit with Calabos, and it's almost like you're expected to know the myth a little bit, whereas there are other things that are explained to you quite literally. Except that. So I remember David sitting next to me watching this going, what is happening? Is her soul being taken? Is she, like, what is happening?
Which
like,
is
you
where
don't
I kind of
know.
take issue with what Noah said is like, yeah, they have to do all this exposition, but they took all this time to kind of explain stuff that wasn't pertinent.
Right, exactly.
So it wasn't the most efficient use of time, whereas, in my experience, don't watch this movie after a long day of work, because if you're trying to slug through this first hour, first time I tried to watch this, I didn't make it through.
That's the same thing that happened with us. We stopped halfway so that we could watch the rest of it the next day.
Yeah, and I woke up with a crazy fever dream of creepy looking fates and random wolves lunging with two heads and stuff.
So. I will say, this is a movie where the second half I feel like really gains a lot of steam and is much more propulsive than the first half.
Right.
The first half kind of just meanders a little bit, and you don't really doesn't have a lot of forward momentum. So I agree there. Let's quickly talk about. This is a good opportunity to talk about Thetis, played by Maggie Smith, and kind kind of just the beginning of this quest here. Also, Bubo, played by R2-D2.
Bubo.
So Maggie Smith, how do we feel about her as Thetis? I know we've kind of alluded to her already, but
she's as good as any of the gods.
Yeah,
which is kind of
I don't know.
I liked her.
I liked her. I like Maggie Smith. It's just that the whole thing with the gods was like 6 out of 10.
David, did you just put on a cap that says I'm gonna neg this movie the whole time?
No, I went into this. I thought this was gonna be better than Jason and the Argonauts. Maybe that is where I fell short.
Maybe that's why you're disappointed.
It might be.
You set your
That's what I'm
expectations too high.
I think I did. I think that is my problem.
I think Maggie Smith is perfectly fine here.
She is. I like Maggie Smith. I want to say this. She's one of my favorite parts of this movie. I'm going to say it right now.
And while she's definitely not the antagonist, but she's like, she is the force opposing Perseus's quest, and I think she does a good job of making you sympathize for Calabos, while also being kind of like this force to be reckoned with for Perseus.
The storytelling helps
people.
with that. I think that's the part where they didn't fail, because you kind of side with her because Zeus is kind of a dick, and he's like, I'm just gonna let Perseus do his thing, and I'm gonna back him up and send him stuff. And whereas she's like, look, seriously, Calabos, you're gonna curse him, and then you're gonna send this guy? Like, come on.
I have this kind of theory about the gods and their antics, where it's one of those interesting things to think about, because every time you hear about stories about the gods, it's always, they were upset about this petty thing, so they created an earthquake and everybody died, And so when I think about it, a lot of these heroes are, valiant and honorable, and they do the right thing. And it's almost like the gods are an excuse as to why life sucks, you know? Like,
Yes, honestly.
they're just kind of to make them feel better about their plight, where it's like, the gods, they're not great.
So keep in mind, even the gods themselves in this Parthenon, it was, they were all deterministic and full, like, the gods themselves were subject to the fates.
Right.
Like, they had their own determined fate. So
exactly.
It's just, it's a whole different kind of perspective on things. Yeah.
What I'm saying is this, it's almost like our plight today, where it's like, it's not my problem, it's because of society, like they always pinning it on those above, which isn't necessarily wrong, but it's just funny. You kind of pin the blame on something above you.
All right, so Perseus he has begun his journey. He takes some people with him. Bubo. We got Bubo, and
I'll let it slide.
David likes some Bubo.
Baggins.
I'll let it slide.
I will say, like, here's the thing. With Jason and the Argonauts, I didn't have to just accept that the movie was dated to enjoy it. I actually thought that movie looked epic. And the way that they, brought to life all these kind of stop motion creatures was really cool. This one, you really have to just accept that it does not look realistic. And that's what I had to do with Bubo, which definitely does not. When it's flying, I'm like, no, I do not believe that. But you know what? Yeah. You kind of have to just give in to the fever dream that is this movie, because there's so much of it where you're just like, none of this looks good.
Anything with wings reminds me of Birdemic.
Yeah.
Anything with wings.
I guess, I don't know.
But wait. But here's the thing. I like Bubo, even though it is a R2-D2 ripoff, and Harryhausen and the people behind this have, claimed that Bubo was a creation that existed before R2-D2, but they added the bleeps and bloops to its voice to kind of, maybe draft off of R2 a little bit.
Yeah.
And I get that. I like Bubo, though. I like Bubo.
I hate the name.
You don't like Bubo?
What a terrible name.
No, it's Bubo. Look at it. It's Bubo.
I hate you. I hate this. I hate the name. Call it like Arginus. I don't know.
Arginus?
It's better than Bubo. Arginus is better than Bubo.
I think David's got a theme here in mind.
Are you telling me Arginus is not better than Bubo? All right, anyone listening right now, if you think Arginus is better than Bubo, go to our Instagram and tell us.
We'll create a poll on Twitter.
This is stupid. Arginus is better than Bubo. That's not even a question. I hate it.
Okay, before we move on in the story, let's talk about the Perseus's interaction with the Stygian witches. We've seen this in so many things.
So many.
AKA the Three Fates.
Yeah, we got Clash of the Titans remake. We got Hercules, the animated movie. So many others.
That's it.
No, they're in so many things.
That said, though, they are very important in Greek mythology.
Oh, 300.
Percy Jackson.
300?
Yeah, 300, yes.
Hercules.
Were they in 300?
In a way, they were, but they
sort of.
weren't the same. They weren't Three Fates. They were like these weird...
They sacrificed babies and got their answer.
All right.
Sure.
So let's talk about this. How does this stack up to other film, interpretations of these three witches? Did y'all like this scene?
I liked the scene. I really liked this setup, and I liked how it played out. It was very similar to the animated film.
Yeah,
These are the first to do it, though.
I think my favorite
you're right.
part is they have this cauldron, and then as they're approaching Perseus, this hand
pops
comes out of the cauldron. He's
love
just
that.
like, "Ah," and they
tamp
just
it
kind of
back.
like push it back
Get
in.
back in there.
That's something you would have never seen in Jason and the Argonauts.
No.
A humorous scene where it's just
Oh,
like
I love that part.
yeah, a little bit of dark comedy. Yeah. I liked this scene. They don't dwell on it too long, thankfully. Like it's just the right amount to kind of set Perseus on his next, like, tell him where to go.
I'm just gonna say it works better if you see it in the original versus the 4K version or whatever version.
Yeah,
the
whatever
highest
one you watch, the
quality is.
HD stream of it.
HD not great. You
Yeah.
can see all the holes in their eyes. It's not great.
Yeah.
The holes in their eyes.
So
silly
the
puppy.
actors can see through the prosthetic.
Right. Okay.
All right, let's move on. On the Gorgon's island, most of Perseus's men are killed. Perseus fights and kills Medusa's guardian, a two-headed dog named Dioscelos. Perseus then enters the Gorgon's lair, where he uses the reflective underside of his shield to deceive Medusa, decapitate her, and collect her head. But the shield is dissolved by her caustic blood. As Perseus and his party set to return, Calabos enters their camp and punctures the cloak carrying Medusa's head, causing her blood to spill and produce 3 giant scorpions. Calabos and the scorpions attack and kill Perseus's remaining escorts, including Thallo, whose death Perseus mourns. Perseus overcomes the scorpions and thereafter kills Calabos. For me, this is the best part of the movie. All the Medusa stuff, the River Styx stuff, all the stuff on Gorgon's Island, I am on board with Clash of the Titans.
Yes, I agree. I think Medusa was great.
Yeah, I think the two-headed dog was a bit weak.
Yes.
That whole fight was okay. I get it. This is very
Not to mention, he's like messing with a python for most of it.
Yeah.
Oh no, there's a snake on my sword.
Okay, but I do want to point out the
snake
interaction.
wasn't venomous.
I think the interaction with the stop motion in this one is done much better than that with the Hydra.
It is,
Yeah.
but it is okay, hold on, AJ. It is equal to the skeletons. It is equal to the
Wait,
skeletons.
what?
He
I
said
don't know if
not
it's equal to-
No, it is, because the skeletons, that's when you have full animation combination with the actors.
No,
You
the
have-
point is, I think Skeleton's Pinnacle. I wouldn't say this is as good as that.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't
I think
it's as
Skeleton's
good.
Yeah.
No, it's the
Skeleton's
same.
Pinnacle.
I guess I'm saying
But-
it's the same, where you actually
Okay.
have full interaction with the change.
The point I'm making is maybe not necessarily. I don't know about the dog, but
the dog is good, but it's very short and
It was
kinda
just
weak.
kind of
uh,
annoying.
But
that's all.
if you put in the way that they interact with them, I think they took out a lot of the kind of scenes where the enemy, the stop motion enemy, seems to be dancing around a bit, and they're just kind of like swinging their sword back and forth at nothing.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know,
There's no contact.
yeah,
in those.
there's
Yeah.
no contact, and when they do the contact, it's
It's empty.
a decisive
Yeah.
blow in this, whereas normally, because actually even with the dog, they show him going up to it and kind of stabbing it, and
I'm just gonna say they had the guys kind of interacting with it. It worked. It was minimal. It was short. It was okay. And then when they had Jason, he just shows up and he does the exact same thing as his men does. He just kind of shows up and slices. And
Yeah.
then, oh, the dog's neck's gone.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I agree.
The crowning jewel, though, of this portion of the story is the Medusa sequence. Yes. I think this is really well done, honestly. And the one moment in the film where I actually felt like genuine tension, it is still obviously like dated. Yeah, you kind of have to accept that. But I think this is where Harryhausen really kind of shines through as like, yes, this is peak Harryhausen. This isn't him phoning it in. He really cared about this portion of the movie. He wanted to nail Medusa.
He was most proud about this.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I love the change in color too. It's a darker scene, a lot more red than anything else in the movie. It's just distinctive, and in my mind, it's like when I think of Clash of the Titans, I think of this moment. It's like this is the iconic moment in the movie where he defeats Medusa and the ultimate like kind of beheading of Medusa. And so it's so satisfying. It's really well done. The integration of live action with this stop motion creation is flawless almost. Like
flawless.
No, when he slashes his sword and cuts her head off,
that's a great moment.
It's like, wow, how'd they do that? I looked at that, I was like, that is a stop motion creature having its head cut off by a real person.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow.
That part's good.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying, that this one did a lot better with the interaction between reality and stop motion.
I think this scene kind of emphasizes how the rest of the movie fails almost. Like, this is the movie you want Clash of the Titans to be all the way through.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, it's like you see the Medusa scene and you're like, okay, I see how good the rest of these scenes
is there.
The rest of these scenes could have been.
Yeah.
All right. So
She's
after
pretty.
after this scene, we have the scorpion fight. This is where Calabos tries to kind of rain on Perseus's parade. He stabs his bag of with Medusa's head in it, only to find out that the blood of Medusa creates scorpions, and they have another tussle, as we say. What do we think about this whole plot development here? This is when Calabos is actually ultimately killed by Perseus after this whole fight.
Suck it, Calabos.
You don't feel bad for him anymore?
No, because he's just a dummy trying to make
he's a
fool
douche
of himself.
nozzle.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, I don't understand how he knew that, oh, that's the Medusa's head. Well, I mean, I guess you could say that Thetis told him, but I don't know, that whole thing where he poked the bag and was like, this will spawn some scorpions.
Well,
they're on my side.
He didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't make sense how that happened, really. I was just questioning, how do you know this? They didn't set it up in such a way that you would be able to spawn some scorpions and they'd be on your side.
This whole movie, though, is something that you're just like, yeah, let's just go with it. You know, it's
I know.
Yeah, this creates scorpions, we gotta fight them. Yeah, Medusa is evil, we gotta fight her. Yeah, there's this two-headed dog, we gotta fight it. Like, it's like, okay, this is a fighting movie, we just gotta fight these things.
It's a video game.
Even though that Medusa is nothing like any of the other Medusas.
Yeah.
No,
did any of y'all feel anything when Calabos was killed?
I felt nothing. Well, except joy that he was finally dead.
Yeah. Anyway, this is really, I said it already, but I think this is where the movie kind of peaked. Just with the whole Medusa scene, the death of Calabos. This movie's really firing on all cylinders during this, and you can tell that the people behind this movie were most passionate about, executing this correctly. And they really, I think they really achieved it, and it does. It's one of those scenes that I think is rightfully iconic. And say what you will about Clash of the Titans as being just this cheesy artifact of the 80s that doesn't quite hold up, but I think this whole sequence really deserves its place in cinema as this kind of just iconic moment. And I was really impressed by it. I love how all of this was pulled off. With that said, are y'all ready to finish off this story?
Yes.
Sure thing.
Cool. Weakened by his struggle, Perseus sends Bubo to rescue Pegasus from Calabos' henchmen and reaches the amphitheater in Joppa, where he collapses from exhaustion. Andromeda is shackled to the sea cliffs outside Joppa, and the Kraken itself is summoned. Bubo diverts the Kraken's attention until Perseus, whose strength was secretly restored by Zeus, appears on Pegasus. In the subsequent battle, Perseus petrifies the Kraken with Medusa's head, causing it to crumble to pieces. He then tosses the head into the sea, frees Andromeda, and marries her. The gods predict that Perseus and Andromeda will live happily, rule wisely, and produce children, and Zeus forbids the other gods to pursue vengeance against them. The constellations of Perseus, Andromeda, Pegasus, and Cassiopeia are created in their honor. Release the Kraken, a much more subdued delivery of that line in this movie compared to the remake.
And how our mind repeats it, too.
Yeah. What do we think about the finale to this film? We have a Kraken, which
showing
is
some midriff.
Yes.
That belly button
By the
shot.
way, the Kraken is very much not a Greek creature. It is derived from something completely different. I want to say, is it Norse? Like, what is the Kraken actually? I know it's not.
There's Ketis or Cetus, which is close.
Yeah. But this Kraken doesn't look like a Kraken, but it's a Kraken. How do we feel about the final confrontation in this movie? Are y'all on board with this portion?
Clash of the Titans.
So this Clash of the Titans,
this part, I mean, slightly underwhelming. I think the Kraken is meant to be something that's the game changer, kind of, oh, the Kraken, yeah!
Yeah, here it comes!
But you see Man-Thing here. And,
well, as we've said, it looks like the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah,
only like Godzilla size.
Yeah. And I don't think it's a big problem so much as just I wanted it to be a bigger spectacle than it was.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think it's properly big. It's
not the size that counts. It's how you use it.
And this is apparently I don't have actually any sources to back this up, but I think Harryhausen had already used this creation in previous films. He just added more arms to it. But yeah, the Kraken is not an original design.
It was a shame that Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't around to be cast at this movie, because he could have jumped on Pegasus and said, "Get to the Joppa!
Get to the Joppa!"
I did read that they wanted Arnold originally for this movie, but
interesting.
What? Yeah,
well, that makes sense because he was in Conan and he fit in that pretty well.
Apparently he didn't get it though, because it was there were too many lines that Perseus had to read, and they were like,
too many lines. Just chucked it into the bin.
But yeah, I didn't dislike this final action sequence. The Pegasus flight a little too slow. It was a little cumbersome, but I was engaged with this final moment. I think they did a good job of ratcheting up the tension of Andromeda being, taken by the Kraken, only to at the last minute, Perseus comes in on the Pegasus.
Falls in the water,
drops Medusa's head. Wow. But yeah, I liked it. I think it ended on a bit not a high note, but it was satisfying.
Yeah.
I think it was nice to see a Harryhausen creature, on a larger scale, which we hadn't really seen in this movie up until this point. So
you're kind of expecting it.
I think the main thing for me was just that, compared to Medusa, this was less appealing.
Yeah.
That the scene with Medusa was optimal, and this was it wasn't bad. It was just it's supposed to be the big spectacle of the movie, and it felt like wasn't.
It felt like them checking a box where it's like, we have to have one like really big monster in this, and they did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want you guys to keep, or maybe this will change your perspective or not. So the story of Andromeda here in this, there's iconic art about this, her, chained to the rock and stuff. And like this, this scene is the prototype of the like kind of damsel in distress, with the dragon creature, like guarding her. Andromeda guarded by Kitos is like what spawns, all of the rest of, stories of the damsel in distress guarded by a dragon. So with that in mind, like looking back on this, do you see this as depicting that such an iconic trope?
I guess I didn't really see it as a trope, but now that you mention it, I can, but you're kind of saying that this one was a little bit the first of its kind. Yeah. Or
this
maybe
is
not
kind of the
first,
model
but...
of what that kind of, thing is imaged after. This is the prototype.
It is kind of interesting because around the same time, there was this old movie, my siblings might recognize, the Dragon Slayer. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where they had those, they would sacrifice these maidens to the dragon and they would have them chained up and, so they could be eaten. Gosh, I need to revisit that movie.
That's kind of nostalgic for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, very similar. There's this huge, like, these virgins or maidens being sacrificed to the great beast and, you know, the hero coming to save them.
Yeah. Conceptually, I have no issue with it. I was, I guess, more talking about the fact that it had less impact than the Medusa scene, even though he was going to save the girl in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's, what we're noting, though, is that it's almost like the big crescendo happened before this.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so we've come to this moment that is playing out like it should be the crescendo, but you're not really feeling it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It felt like the whole movie was kind of going through the motions, and then they had this really, like a stroke of brilliance with Medusa, and then they went back to like going through the motions again.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the motions they go through are adequate.
Yeah, well, so take that word adequate, and then they try to close with something as grandiose as showing the constellations that these, these characters spawned.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't feel as grand in scale as it's supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah, and you're like, did they really deserve those constellations? Yeah, maybe Perseus does. He did a real good job. But
Stand up, guy.
Yeah, the rest of it is like, it's like, okay, cool, that's fine. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and on the other end, we're going to get into our brief reviews, then talk about what critics thought, get into some box office, and then talk about this movie's franchise potential, or lack thereof. So we'll see y'all then. Welcome back. Are y'all ready to talk about Clash of the Titans, the original 1981 version? Yeah.
Wait, weren't we talking about Titanic?
Oh, right.
Well, AJ
that's
was.
right.
The rest of us were.
I just got
talking Clash of
confused.
Titans, yeah.
My heart will go on.
So, David, do you want to pull those reviews at random?
First up, Noah with a 7.5.
I had a good time, I gotta say.
Yep.
Had a good time.
In movies like this, it's easy to just look at it and say, oh, this didn't keep up. But for me, it didn't really affect my judgment on the movie. But I thought I had a good time. I enjoyed the characters more than I did in the first one.
I mean, not the first one, but Jason and the Argonauts.
I keep saying the first one.
It seems like they're connected. It really does.
It's just that stop motion aspect of it.
I mean, he is a grandfather of Jason, so.
Good point.
Close enough. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. The things that I criticized this for would be the same things I criticized the first one for, and that's kind of pacing and, maybe that didn't look as good as it could have. But for the most part, I liked the story of this one a little bit more than the first one. But as far as the stop motion goes, it was slightly lacking compared to the first one. I think the first one really nailed it with the skeletons and maybe not the harpies, but the skeletons were just revolutionary as far as that goes. And this one didn't really have that revolutionary scene, but all of it was done very well. I think the integration of reality with the stop motion was done as well as you could do for this style of movie. And I just liked the adventure aspect of it as much as I did the first one.
Or Jason and the Argonauts.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. As much as Jason and the Argonauts. So I'll keep it with that 7.5.
All right.
Next up with A. I don't know. Is AJ 6.5?
Yeah, I'm debating. All right, I'll go with my heart. 6. Let's do 6.
All right,
I
6.
had trouble staying awake for this movie, and I attribute that partially to I don't know, being tired, I guess, obviously. But it didn't help that the first big chunk of this movie was just dragging on and on, and then we get all this action kind of at the end, which I just felt like a fever dream kind of. I don't know. It felt like distinct moments, and we're gonna inevitably compare this to Jason and the Argonauts, aka the first one. Whereas it didn't have that interconnective tissue, but it's still I guess they're on two sides of the spectrum. One was just like highlights of action without the interwoven story plot between. This one was too much on the other extreme, where it's too much just of the dull and drab. For unnecessary exposition, I guess, because it didn't really further the story, in my opinion. Like, we set all this stuff up, but I still was lost. And I mean, I know the story from mythology, so I don't know. Like, and especially like we said, that the full flow of this movie, the ultimate showdown with the Kraken. We never got a Clash of the Titans, but that was probably going to be the closest thing to it. It was just kind of like, okay, let's get through this. Like, obligatory almost. I don't know.
Right.
And then it didn't feel as legendary as it should have been for the story of Perseus. And kind of like I alluded to, this is something that is prototypical of a lot of storytelling. This movie didn't really hold its own to that standard for me. So if they went more the route of Jason, just showing the highlights and just kind of the digestible action, maybe I'm just dumb, but I don't know. I get that Jason had a lot of the dubbing and that helped a lot, but there is something to what David was saying. I mean, this is 20 years later, but it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like there was an actual progress in those 2 decades. And it also doesn't embody the spirit of the 80s with the Harryhausen style of stop motion as something like Never Ending Story is. Like, that is dated for sure, but it also embodies this magical feel of a generation of nostalgia and all that stuff that goes along with it. This just kind of was bland, and that's not something that titled Clash of the Titans should be whatsoever. Or it just didn't feel legendary, and it unfortunately is not something that I wanted to sit through even on the first watching. Unfortunately, I was just disappointed. So it was a letdown. And if I had to choose something that's classic, I would not think of this movie if it weren't for the, I guess, what's the word, reputation that something like this might have. But now that I know in full what it is, like, my mind would not go to this movie whatsoever. So I'm perfectly fine landing this at a 6. Now, I know that was a lot of negative, so I will go here a bit on positive. I feel like Andromeda was kind of the shining point of this movie, and I feel like I wish she kind of got a little bit more screen time, and I know that's not her story. This is about Perseus, I guess, so to speak, and even the mythology doesn't really focus on the damsel in distress, but I felt like she was the glue that kind of motivated things, and she was the central things why, Calabos was doing what he did and his internal struggle, and Perseus, his scenes were the best when he was just one-on-one with her, in my opinion.
I actually agree. She did a pretty good job of that. And the way they did her character was she was not this completely useless damsel. She was actually trying to help out throughout the time. She wasn't just, I'll sit back and do nothing.
Yeah.
So
I get where they're going with the character creation and all that things. And I give them props to doing that style and, the Shakespearean approach. It just, maybe they needed a strong director to, cut and trim things where it needed to be cut and smooth things over. So that might have been what we're looking for is maybe a strong director to really kind of take the reins here and shape it how it needed to be shaped. So
you guys stick with the 6.0 there, huh?
Yep.
Next up is Irina with a 6.
Yeah, so a lot of what AJ has said is pretty much how I feel as well. And it's so difficult because this is kind of mostly inspired by Harryhausen, and this is kind of his art form, and movies are just, an ability to showcase that art form. And I think that's kind of the problem, because it's obvious that movies and motion pictures have moved on, and I think it was kind of written on the wall that stop motion was not going to be pursued from here on out.
Yeah.
When in this decade, the 80s, you have things like Indiana Jones and other stories kind of taking up the mantle and being the new classics from people that were inspired by movies in his generation. So it's sort of like that farewell almost to stop motion as a special effect feature. So it's bittersweet for me. Part of me was watching this movie and thinking, man, am I just out of touch? Do I just not get it? Maybe I'm being a little too critical because I didn't grow up on this. And I was watching some interviews where there were people that are involved in other movies where they talked about these films and raved about Harryhausen, but they also did have to admit that these movies were lacking, that they were mostly just looking forward to the monsters and everything else was sort of fluff.
Yeah.
And that is how I feel. Unfortunately, in this movie, I think they dialed back the monsters sometimes and the creatures to create a better plot and more focus on the characters and their involvement, which I do think improved, but it wasn't enough. It was kind of too late, Again, going back to Andromeda, I think she was one of the few characters where, while watching the movie, I mentioned to David, I actually like this. I like this girl. I don't know, she's more interesting, and it's unfortunate. I don't think I got to talk about her enough earlier, but definitely props to that actress and her character. I think she actually carried Perseus a little more through the film than he would have on his own. So she pulled a little more out of him. Overall,
Judy Bowker.
Huh?
Judy Bowker is her name. Just since both of us forgot her names, and she needs to be recognized.
Thanks for calling that out.
Thank you. So while I do see improvement where improvement was needed from Jason and the Argonauts, it's not enough. And they are behind. So I kind of view this movie as a farewell almost to Ray Harryhausen's career in film. It just wasn't suited for the 80s and on, and maybe it will be returned to, but I think he had his time in the light and now it was over. So
yeah,
I think I'm going to stick at 6. I enjoyed myself, but I probably won't watch this.
Fair enough.
That also goes to the fact that the movie didn't technically start until halfway through, so that kind of loses a lot of viewers already.
Yeah.
And next up, Reese with a 7.
Yeah. So I align a little more with Noah here on this movie. I'm always down for a grand adventure, and I think this movie does that really well. I actually kind of like that it is split up in this weird way where there's this kind of mini adventure in the first half and then the big grand adventure in the second half. It's kind of it's just new in a way that I'm not used to you know, I'm not used to movies taking this direction. I like Harry Hamlin as the lead in this a lot more than I did Todd, what's his name, in Jason and the Argonauts. I think this guy actually, you know, does a lot to kind of sell, you know, the audience on why you should root for Perseus. While I don't think the all of his encounters with these, you know, Harryhausen beasts are as memorable as they are in Jason and the Argonauts, and I actually feel like Jason and the Argonauts is a better film, I'm still like, I'm really on board with this adventure, and I like that it kind of, you know, subverts my expectations in terms of, you know, how you approach your typical adventure fantasy film. Other than that, I honestly just, I enjoyed it. It's got its flaws. It's very dated. I actually think it's more dated than Jason and the Argonauts, which is weird because Jason and the Argonauts is 20 years older than this movie. But I still, as a swan song to the Ray Harryhausen type of film, I think it does a admirable job, and I enjoyed my experience with it. So there you have it, 7 out of 10.
So I just want to, what you said in the beginning there kind of gave me a thought where you know, how it's segmented. If they almost did like a roadshow format with, you know, different distinct acts or segments and have an interlude and stuff like that, that's something on a large grand scale, I think that would have been conducive to like the length of it and having it kind of broken up.
Yeah, if this had been a longer film with an intermission between those 2 points or something like that.
3?
Yeah. That could have worked in its benefit for sure. Mm-hmm. All right, last up, we have David with a
5.
All right, so we have our scores. AJ, you want to crunch those numbers for us?
All right, group average is a 6.3, and just for comparison's sake, last time we talked about Jason and the Argonauts, and we had a group average of 7.6 for that movie.
So Jason and the Argonauts is the clear winner in our 2 Harryhausen films. Good for Jason and the Argonauts, not so good for Clash of the Titans.
Overall, let me find where we've got this guy here. So 6.3 ties it with 28 Weeks Later, The Never-Ending Story, interestingly enough, Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, and then that puts it just above The Chronicles of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and Dragonheart.
Interesting.
And is just below Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas.
I mean, I could kind of see it with that company.
Wait, it's below Sinbad?
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense.
I'm fine with that.
Almost
personally.
as much sense as a 7.
I would probably watch Sinbad before I watched this. I think.
I definitely would.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. 6.34, what'd you say?
6.3. So it has the same score as The Never-Ending Story, the other iconic 80s stop-motion kind of puppet movie.
Yeah, that Noah tends to love.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I actually rated that one pretty well. Oh, comparatively. I still really am not a fan of puppets.
I would say I think in our rating system, the movies that are around the 6 and 7 range, it's almost like a personal preference thing, you know, where we're all kind of like, yeah, it's good and I can see why it's good, but I would prefer this over this, you know. It's sort of nebulous about that range where, so nothing I would say is really exact. That's where we seem to differ the most.
And for me, at least, you know, especially with movies of this age, a lot of the score, I mean, I'm going to admit, for me, is influenced by kind of the status of the title. Like, it's supposed to be classic. Like, even Never-Ending Story and this movie, like, I know, even just like looking at the poster, the title, and the art, like, okay, this is supposed to be, I don't know. It lends positive credence to it somehow.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Let's move on to critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 68%. So that is a fresh score from critics, although it isn't certified fresh, which you have to have a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes to get that certification. The audiences gave it a 70%. So it is generally liked by both critics and audiences, though it is never a seriously applauded movie. On Metacritic, it has a 59 out of 100, which is just barely in the mixed/average category. And it has a 7.5 out of 10 from audiences, which is it's in the green, it's positive. On IMDb, this movie has a 6.9 out of 10, which I would say is pretty much mixed as well. So overall, I'd say this movie has a mixed to positive reception from both critics and audiences. People don't hate this movie. They don't love it either. It's kind of in the middle ground there with a slight tilt towards positive for the original Clash of the Titans. Let's move on to the box office. So this is a 1981 picture, so I did the whole inflation calculator for this one. The movie was budgeted at 9 to 15 million back in 1981.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long night for all of us. So if you want to know what that translates to in today's dollars, it is roughly 26 to 44 million budget.
Not too bad.
Yeah, the movie released this will kind of make it difficult for you to predict, but it released against Raiders of the Lost Ark and History of the World Part 1 in the same weekend. History of the World Part 1 is the Mel Brooks parody.
Right.
So, or a spoof, I should say. And the week after, this movie would see the release of Superman 2. So it's kind of a stacked summer movie season.
Tough competition.
Yes. So, worldwide, and this is including inflation, what do you all think Clash of the Titans did worldwide? Let's start with AJ.
Oof. Gosh. So, I don't even know what I was going to say going against Jason. That's 20 years prior. I'll just shoot out an even 100 just for the sake of it.
100 million worldwide?
Yeah.
All right. 100 million for AJ. Irina.
It's really hard for me to say. Let's go with 80.
80 million?
Yeah.
All right. Noah.
I'm going to be low here. I'm going to say 50.
50 million.
Yeah.
David. And this is with inflation, by the way, guys. Just so you know.
Right.
35 million.
35 million? That's
Low.
so... Okay.
I'm hitting a low.
All right. Okay. This is going to surprise y'all. Worldwide, this movie did 204 million.
That's actually ridiculous.
It was a massive hit. It was actually the 11th most successful movie of the year.
Yeah.
Despite releasing against Raiders of the Lost Ark and History of the World Part 1 and later Superman 2, this movie, found its own, spot and
Where's the
managed
sequel?
It must be a nostalgia factor.
Yeah, it was very successful.
Where's the sequel?
There is no sequel.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Is that like quintuple the original?
So before we go, I will go
Watch
into
it.
the actual numbers. This movie did 70 million worldwide back in the day. That just translates to 204 million. But yeah, it was a big success at the time. I don't know if that was a surprise to anyone. It was, but it really. I don't think anyone was expecting Raiders of the Lost Ark to be as big as it was. But I think this is really when summer movies were starting to get into gear as like like this is the beginning of the summer movie season where people are actually going to see the movies.
Before this wasn't a thing?
Yeah, no, in big number. Like, I think Jaws was the big kickoff of the summer movie season. That was in the 70s. But there was no kind of, blockbuster summer movie season as we know it until Jaws. And so the summer movie was still kind of a new thing. And this is when they were really starting to kick into high gear. Like, okay, this is where we're releasing all our big movies. And it turns out 1981 was a big movie for summer movies. We had, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Superman 2. This movie, Clash of the Titans, number 11 at the box office worldwide. But, you'd think a movie this successful would get a sequel, right?
You would think.
But no, we do not have a sequel for Clash of the Titans 1981. But that doesn't mean that they did not try to make something like this happen. So this one was kind of hard to do research for. Not super hard, but a little bit hard. There is... Ray Harryhausen actually had a lot of work done up for a sequel and a lot of kind of pre-production stuff in the works for what he wanted the sequel to Clash of the Titans to be. It was going to be a title called Force of the Trojans. And this is where I'm not as clear on what was actually happening, but there was a bunch of Ray Harryhausen's work that was dug up recently that kind of revealed a lot of information about this kind of the furthering of this franchise. And actually, up until it was actually 2018, there was an announcement that they would continue this forward, and that they were actually going into production on Force of the Trojans. 2018, by the way, that was only 3 years ago, and. So I want to say it was Harryhausen's estate that announced this 3 years ago that they would actually make this Force of the Trojans movie, and it would be a combination of, Harryhausen's classic style of stop motion mixed with modern day CGI. And that is technically still alive and well today, though we have not heard an update about, how that's going. So technically, there is still a sequel in the works for this movie, but if you're asking me, I don't think it's actually going to happen, even though they've already announced it. But yeah, it's this is a unique scenario where, yeah, there was a plan to make a sequel to this movie way back in the day, and now they're kind of trying to pick up the baton and run with it again now, but we haven't heard anything about it. I mean, what do y'all think about this? Would you all want to see a sequel to the original 1981 Clash of the Titans, or do you think it's too late?
I would see it. I think if there's enough to kind of recall what happened before, I think there could be a decent sequel to it.
Mythology is always cool.
It really is.
It is.
Yeah, and
yeah.
I don't think this is happening, but I would love to see a take on a take that is respectful of the Harryhausen origin.
Yeah,
and it is something that implements that kind of stop motion aspect or stop motion, mentality. Or, I can't think of words right now. A stop motion art into a modern day medium, in conjunction with CGI. I want to see what that looks like, and. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Want to see something that actually lives up to the title, Clash of the Titans.
Yeah.
Clash of the Titans. Just actually have something that's actually about Titanomachy, just the big hitters, worldwide I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I know what you mean.
And then some
funny thing,
small demigod hero, I don't know.
I think Wrath of the Titans finally does that. I know that's not a popular movie for a lot of people, but that finally shows a Clash of Titans of sorts.
We'll talk about that in 2 weeks.
We will. But yeah, it is kind of funny that you've got two movies that are called Clash of the Titans and they don't show a lot of Titans actually clashing.
Yeah.
We do have Hercules, the animated Disney, where you get the tornado and the volcano guy and the ice guy.
True. That's true. I just dropped a glass. Yeah, it's weird that you have to go to a Disney film to finally see a Titans clashing. But yeah, I really want this Force of the Trojans thing to be real. I'd like to see what they would do with this. It's unfortunate that this hasn't quite gone as planned for this franchise ever. Like, honestly,
or you could go the Henson route and just do a Muppets Clash of the Muppets.
Clash of the
Trojans invade Troy or something.
If you want an instant zero from Noah, that's the way to go.
I don't know. I mean, did you ever see the Muppets Treasure Island? That's a good movie. And Muppets Space.
I love puppets.
That was so convincing.
All right. That is let's close it here. That's the end of our episode. Next week, we will be talking about... This is the first time we talk about 2 movies in a row that have the same title. But we are talking about Clash of the Titans, the 2010 remake, next week by Louis Leterrier. This will be quite an interesting discussion. We've never talked about a original and then a remake back to back. I'm very excited to see what we think about the changes this remake made, our opinions on what the remake or the original do better / worse. Yeah, definitely excited to break into the remake and the sequel to the remake, Wrath of the Titans. How about you guys?
I am.
I'm actually kind of excited.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get the title right this time.
Any final words on Clash of the Titans 1981 before we depart here?
Not really.
All right. Next week, Clash of the Titans remake 2010. All right. Goodbye, you guys.
Bye.
Later, my dudes.
Bye.
Peace.
So many women, and all these transformations and disguises he invents in order to seduce them. Sometimes a shower of gold, sometimes a bull or a swan. Why, once he even tried to ravish me disguised as a cuttlefish.